I was one of them for lunch on Saturday.
Can't see you actually.
And then they arrived for fireworks.
Hello everyone, good evening. Welcome to the Abbeygate Cinema, to those that are here in person and to those that are watching wherever you may be watching from around the world. And this is a world premiere of a film to launch, unbelievably, our 20th year of making theatre, which started very humbly in back gardens in Wepstead in Suffolk and the Abbey Gardens here in Bury St Edmunds where we are tonight. And this film, which has been directed by Tristan McShepherd, who is here, who produced lots of the films that many of you may have watched through lockdown, and has directed this. And it is the culmination, if you like, a retrospective looking back at 20 years of the ups and the many downs on the roller coaster ride of working and making theatre with original theatre. So we're going to watch the film, and then after the film, I'm going to announce the shows we've got lined up for this 20th anniversary season that we have. And then after that, Lucy, who is here, is going to lead a question and answer session with Tristan, Tom Hackney, my producer, and myself. And we're going to just take your questions that may come from the film you're about to see or anything else you might like to ask. So whether you are supportive audience members, esteemed writers, actors, welcome. Thank you for joining us. I hope you enjoy the film that is called Original at Last. Enjoy the show. Can we please go from Barrage exits? Barrage exits. And we're going to move into the factory and we're going to run the whole scene.
Stand by, everyone.
And you see him idling like that. Yeah. Push him back to work. Yeah, give him a kind of a push. Okay. Yeah, well, on the movement, when everyone moves, you need to lead that change. No, sort of scatter a bit. Yeah, scatter. Okay, Rafe, come down for me. Hug back, Gracie, come down. Sulin, to your left, please. Sargon, to your right, please.
Ignition. 4, 3, 2, 1, lift off. The clock is running.
So to sum up how it all began, it's difficult because, I mean, A, it's 20 years ago, and B, a huge amount happened in a very short amount of time.
I am incredibly surprised that we have lasted 20 years.
I think it would be fair to say that for the first few years, I would not have put any money on original lasting certainly as long as it has, or not evolving into something else.
There was always a real energy and a real passion behind everything that they were producing, and you could kind of sense that, but there was always a real feeling of chaos.
Those first sort of 4 or 5 years when I look back on them, it was just sort of disaster after disaster.
There are so many times where I think this company could have gone, okay, do you know what, that's it, we can't manage.
Someone else would have just dropped the whole thing at show 2 of his first production.
There was a lot of winging it, borrowing resources here, there, a lot of goodwill from actors, but I certainly don't think many people thought that this was sustainable.
If that model had continued, I would be angry that they were still around. But he changed the model.
He's a survivor, he proved that.
Of course, theatre never works in straight lines.
Alastair is the cat with 9 lives, you know, and he will always land on his feet.
Kind of disaster doesn't probably freak me out in the way that it used to. Maybe you just become kind of battle-hardened.
20 years on from coming up with the idea of original theatre, I feel, if anything, we have now kind of got ourselves where a model that exists, at least in this moment, which is sustainable enough for us to actually be original. So we're here now, back in the garden of my mum and dad's house, which is in Wepstead, a little village about 4 miles out of Bury St Edmunds. And it was here on a very autumnal feeling day back in the summer of 2005 that we did our very, very, very first show. I'd like to say it was sort of to a public audience, but it was probably to like my mum and dad's friends. And it was 12th night once again, and it was done exactly here. I was here watching it with one of my mum and dad's friends who was much more interested in the weather, a bit like today, but much worse. And there was a storm, like this lightning storm, that was circling the performance. And then Malvolio's got this line, "I'll be revenged on the whole pack of you." And as he did that line, a bolt of lightning, which feels like it must be a false memory, but I spoke to someone and they remembered it too, hit the bottom of this wooden set, like from the sky, gasps from the audience. And then at the end of the play, you've got Feste who sings, "And the rain it raineth every day." And as he sung that first line, the heavens just opened, and I was stood exactly here, and I just watched the entire audience empty immediately, just darted to their cars. And that was it, and that was the end of the first show. No applause, nothing, just sort of drama. We were upstaged by the weather. I set up the company 20 years ago. It was 2004. I'd just kind of come home from my second year at university, and I remember that at the university there was a show that got put on every year, and I had this idea to do 12th night and was really upset when they went with someone else because they said I'd be absolutely a catastrophe with any kind of thing involving money. And I was so annoyed by this that I sort of decided that I was going to do my own production anyway. And that became this 22 venue national tour. And that show was a complete disaster in every possible way.
So I saw the very first original show, which was an outdoor production of 12th Night. I think I saw it in a field in Haywards Heath in West Sussex.
It was a beautiful show and bright and sunny and happy, but it was stuck together with tape.
You know, that tour was absolutely nuts, I think, and everything that could go wrong did go wrong.
I mean, the guy who'd been playing Malvolio before I came in allegedly was getting stoned, like so stoned that he didn't know where he was before he went on stage.
I was truly the worst producer that, you know, anyone has ever conceived of.
We'd have a show in Devon and then like a show in Leeds the next day and then a show in Devon the day after. And people were like, do we have to go to Leeds and then come back to Devon? Can we not do it the other way around?
And so it was a brutal awakening.
God, it was fucking terrible. Like it was incredible, but it was fucking. I think the thing that pissed me off the most was we just didn't get paid. I didn't even ask about the money. I think when the call came, I was just like, yeah, acting work, yeah, great, I'll do it, fine.
Instead of going bankrupt, which is what everyone said I should do, again, this stubborn streak said, no, I'm going to sort of, you know, make this good. Paid everyone off, which took 7 or 8 years, but kept going, and we just did one show a year for the next 3 or 4 years. Just purely at that point, outdoor theatre. So we're here in the middle of Bury St Edmunds, under the gateway to the Abbey Gardens, which is the first venue, or our second venue, we ever performed in. And this is how the audience would have arrived, through this sort of magnificent arch, much better set than anything we could provide. And it was then behind us about 150 metres down here that we'd put on our very first productions back in 2005, 2006, 2007, 2008. Just along this little avenue of trees and bushes where we first did our production of 12th Night back in the July of 2005. And we subsequently came back over 4 successive years doing 12th Night, Taming of the Shrew, Midsummer Night's Dream, and ultimately Shakespeare's R&J, which is the show where I met Tom.
I started off with the company as an actor back in 2008. I find this very hard to believe, but I was a very dashing Juliet.
Romeo, wherefore art thou, Romeo?
I was a little less beardy then. Actually, I performed in the gardens just through there, probably all of about 30, 35 people in the pouring rain.
So this is the garden where we did two. So you say that we did R&J up here?
We did, because I remember the concrete because it blooming hurt during the fight scenes.
And Taming of the Shrew we did at that end, behind these Trivial Pursuits, still up after 19 odd years, is probably the only surviving poster of this show that we did in the garden here. It's probably the second or third venue. It says here on the 27th of June, 2006.
I'm not sure if I should name the actor, but one of the lovely actors who was in it, who was Fight Master Emeritus, And he was responsible for the injury of every member of the cast. I think he gave one of the actors nerve damage. I think it was either here or one of the other venues where he stage kicked me in the ribs, but actually nearly broke my ribs.
In our head, it's outdoors, it's really big, but actually they're tiny.
It's tiny.
It's like we probably have 50 people in here. But an amazing sort of that's Constable country in the background, that kind of backdrop, and then this beautiful pub there. Sort of pretty cool place to do it.
Should we do it again?
No. But yeah, so this was we only did it twice, this pub, but people still talk about it. It was around that Shakespeare's R&J as we went inside. We went from outdoor theatre to indoor theatre, and we no longer had to rely on the British summertime to sort of make sure we kind of could break even.
I first met Original in 2010 when I auditioned for Journey's End, and I went in to be stand-up. And this very young guy, who I imagined was either the casting director or something, was reading in for Rally, but went for it, all guns blazing. And we were in there for about an hour and a half, you know, and he was full on, tears, snot, throwing things, everything. So I didn't realise that was the actor I'd be working with. And then who turned into the producer that is Tom Hackney. And I think I was probably a little bit miffed that I was being upstaged and out-acted by the producer. And later on, I found out I got the job as I walked in. What? Then why did you drag me through 90 minutes of Tom Hackney hell? Like, he went through blood, sweat and tears to get me that role. He really threw himself into it.
So 2010, we did The Madness of George III by Alan Bennett, which starred Simon Ward, huge actor back in the 70s, 80s, an amazing actor. Susie Penhaligon was in it, playing the King and the Queen. And it was the worst thing I've ever directed.
I feel like I've blocked quite a lot of it.
I was both in it, producing it, and directing it, or trying to, and failing on all three really quite badly.
I don't know whether it was cursed or whether there weren't, at that point, measures put in place in order to avert disaster, which seemed to happen on a kind of daily basis.
We tried to clothe it and costume it on the cheap, which that was a mistake.
One of the design concepts was this like paper mache cardboard wig. It was really heavy. I can remember that the costume designer had to bring in like 20 of her friends. It was like the Tale of Gloucester. They were like sewing until 3 minutes before we went on to do the show. I think basically they had designed this very elaborate show thinking it was going to be this step up for original theatre, and they just hadn't got the capacity to make it work.
Had its Scottish premiere at Perth Theatre. It was playing a 2-week run, and they rolled out the red carpet for it. You know, it was a big deal, Alan Bennett show, and all the great and the good of Perth, and all the Scottish press came. So we got in on the night that we were going to open, and then all the cast arrived at sort of 4 o'clock expecting to go on stage, and they were still rigging the lights. Nothing was ready. The set was sort of falling over. This show opened an hour and a half late, and the lighting was non-existent. It was just dark for the whole thing.
It felt like a sitcom, like someone was filming us, and that it wasn't the reality.
The audience was actually angry. You know, you could feel it. They were tired, and the show was bad, really, really bad.
I could not stop corpsing. I was playing a servant as well, so we had to stand there like straight-faced, trying not to upstage anybody, which we inevitably did. It was ludicrous.
And the Scottish press properly went for me. Susie Penhaligon sat me down and she said, "Darling, it's okay to fail." At the time I didn't want to hear that because I didn't want to admit that I'd failed. This was sort of, the day after those reviews landed. But I still speak to her about it. I think that was a really nice lesson that she sort of gave me that day, which is that's what artists and people that make things, you've got to get things wrong. That's how you learn to make them better. In 2012, we did a production of Our Country's Good, just before we had done a production of See How They Run and 12th Night. Quite good productions, but they're big cast, 12 people in them. No one has ever twinned them before and done them in a double bill, and nobody will ever do it again. And we toured it through the autumn, and I couldn't book the thing. No one wanted both of these shows. They really didn't sell. But we lost an absolute fortune. And then we were mounting Our Country's Good, which is again a big cast and a tough sell. and the money had run out.
We had some investment and it all just fell through incredibly late, and we kept thinking we were going to get some funding or something. All of the bridges that we thought we'd set up just kept falling one by one.
Quite soon into the rehearsal period, there was a sense that behind the scenes perhaps there was something a little bit off.
I've got at best a week left of rehearsals, and then unless I can find a magic pot of money, it's all going to fall apart.
I think Alastair actually stayed at mine over Christmas, but kind of seemed to lock himself in a room. And I remember going up, actually knocking on the door going, Mum says I need to give you some sandwiches because she thinks you're going to top yourself. It's like, topping myself? I'm trying to save my company!
I think Alastair had gone ahead with cracking on with rehearsals, but not actually knowing whether this production was even going to get up on stage.
I would like to think this is exaggerated in the retelling of it, but it actually happened like this. It was Friday. I knew at the end of that day we would be able to pay the actors for that week, and that was the last of the money. So at 5:30 I was going to rehearse for the day and then say,
sadly, the tour can't go ahead.
And the company's going bankrupt. And at 5 o'clock my phone was like buzzing, and there was a voice message, and it was from a lady that didn't really introduce herself, but she just did say something about a pigeon that was flying across London on a mission to drop something, a package in East London, and left the number of her accountant. Can I call this person?
One of Alastair's many, many thousands of phone calls he probably made over that period was to Lady Susie Sainsbury.
And then this accountant said, yeah, Susie Sainsbury's put in £20,000.
Looked down at the bottom and there we had a cheque.
And it is just quite shocking that none of us had a clue that he was under that kind of tension. No stress on Alastair's face at all, so to his everlasting credit, or his everlasting psychosis, whichever way you want to look at it.
So that was kind of an extraordinary moment of the company at one of its lowest points, and was that close to it all kind of falling apart.
I like pickled onions, I like piccalilli, pickled cabbage is all right with a bit of cold meat on a Sunday night. I can go tomatoes is but what I do prefer. It's a little bit of cucumber, it's a little bit of cucumber.
So those are the years 2012, 2018, and in the gap of those 6 years, the two shows that we basically did repeatedly were Birdsong and Three Men in a Boat. One was a big touring show that toured to the biggest theatres in the country. One was more fleet-footed. Tom and I were in it, and it sort of played the mid-scale venues.
So I met Original Theatre in 2012. I think I received an email from my agent saying a small theatre company was interested in doing a new production of Birdsong. And it had been difficult in the West End. The production had been very impressive, but for whatever reason the script hadn't quite worked. And it hadn't really landed as I'd hoped it might. And then sitting there in Basingstoke on the first preview, watching Alice's production, and I just saw all these people crying. And then I started crying because I was just so relieved that it worked.
I went to Birdsong hoping it would be wonderful, and it was wonderful. And I spoke to Alastair afterwards, and I thought, well, he's definitely grounded and matured. And I worked with a couple of people. I worked with a lighting guy who'd worked with him. I worked with a couple of actors over a short space of time. And they all said, oh, he's great. And he's really looking after his actors, and he pays us properly, and he cares. And he refers back to that first tour, people told me. And he still uses it as a sort of lesson as to how not to go about things.
We used to do these things, we had two things, one called Original Reads and one called Original Labs. And the Reads is when we just get a cast together and we read a play, and the Labs was about developing a script. So it's probably 2015 when we were doing an original read of Invincible, and it went down an absolute storm, and then on the night, Alastair said, we're going to put this on.
So Invincible was played by Torben Betts, really funny play about the North-South divide. It had real sort of zip and politics, but was, brilliantly funny. Play for 4 actors, and I thought this could work.
Invincible wasn't just, as it started out, another classic sort of fly by the seat of your pants production.
And there were all sorts of bumps on the road to actually making it happen. One of which, the most sizable, was perhaps the fact that we rehearsed in a disused Argos in Bury St Edmunds, which was freezing cold.
Alastair was in that production, but clearly quite distracted. The company was in financial trouble again.
Once again, we had no money, and the Arts Council had said no twice. And then we kicked up a fuss, went in to see them, and the only time this has ever happened, they changed their mind.
We all really celebrated that with Alastair because we all really believed in it and knew it was worth doing.
I think it was exactly what original needed at the time as well.
Audiences absolutely loved it. Roll on a year later, and we're taking it to New York. We got to the Brits Off-Broadway Festival. So, if you told me, 1 minute we're rehearsing in this disused shopping centre in Bury St Edmunds, and the next minute we're off Broadway with this production. Again, it feels like that is a very classic original trajectory.
Watch this space, but I think we might be on the verge of something quite extraordinary.
From this evening, I must give the British people a very simple instruction. You must stay at home.
For any particular timing, that was probably the worst time for us as a company for lockdown to hit. So we had a brand new play called The Croft, and we had The Habit of Art, one show that had reached its dress rehearsal, so it had spent all its money. And we had one show that had yet to recoup any money that was needing the next leg of its tour. So effectively, all the cards were in.
And literally, as we said, overnight, on the Monday night, everything stopped. We realised all our shows were cancelled, and that's all our income.
I think it's the one time we had to call up the actors and go, look, we cannot pay you at the end of this week.
I think we had like £7,000 left in the account because we'd spent all the money opening this show, over £100,000. And obviously then the box office just shut, the theatre shut, so we had nothing, we couldn't get any of that money back. And I thought, okay, well, let's see what we can do with that little bit of money. Maybe we'll just, furlough, and we'll mothball the company, and we'll come back in a year's time. I've always wanted a holiday.
Maybe I should have taken you to that travel lodge in Hitchin.
I got a phone call from Emma Martin, and she was basically putting out an SOS.
Can you get down to Croydon and Eastbourne tomorrow to film these two shows?
It was very much like the last helicopter out of Saigon. I bundled together a team of filmmakers, and we hit the deserted roads of the UK.
And we had never filmed a show, and we had no platform, no way of sharing it. We had no contracts in place, we had no agreements.
Are you absolutely mad? Like, at a moment when the industry is crumbling, you're thinking of a new business venture.
If we didn't film them, then nothing could happen. I thought if we got them in the can, we might be able to do something. We had no audience, no ways of selling this, and we had to sort of do all that within a week.
Yeah.
Emma then built this platform or a website which had a mechanism to take money. We'd never taken money ourselves before, so we'd no means of doing that. And literally a week after filming it, we released The Habit of Art for £2.50. Unbelievable now that we released it for £2.50.
Plays. They don't so much go into production as into intensive care.
I'm not sure that any of us had really given it much forethought as anything other than a record of the production. But it became pretty apparent pretty quickly that this was going to be a piece of work in its own right.
Our biggest successes as a company have always hands down been when our back's against the wall, and I think probably the crown jewel of all that was the pandemic.
Original decided that we would just see if we could make money and what we could do, and it was terrifying and incredibly stressful at many points. But to be able to think that we could still create our work and have kind of a purpose in this time. I, was living alone and doing my garden otherwise.
We weren't being truly original or sort of trying to be provocateurs or trying to push the envelope. We were just trying to survive.
And then maybe 2 weeks later, Alastair gives me a call. He wants to do a reading of Birdsong.
As a Zoom reading?
We did a rehearsal of this reading, which was a total disaster. And myself and Dom Bilkey, who was doing sound, said it was impossible to do it and that we needed to film it all on iPhone with little plug-in mics, send all the equipment to the actors, give them green screens and do all the backgrounds at home. The actors would film themselves on their phones while interacting on Zoom so they could hear one another, and then they'd load all of their clips into Dropbox and I would cut them together on the other end. It was just kind of a miracle. It got made. I had so little time that I didn't even have time to watch it back before I had to send it over to get up on the streaming platform.
It was an extraordinary success, except for the fact that we could only release it for 3 days because the film company had residual rights for it. Just as it was beginning to take off with sales, again, we had to pull it. So we had to keep going.
I don't know how much longer I can keep doing this. You've been saying that for years.
So I'm not going to lie, when he told me he was going to film Apollo 13 in people's homes.
And do zero gravity in people's bedrooms.
And I thought he was mad. I can picture sitting on my bed and listening to him tell me that and being like, this isn't going to work.
We'd lie the green screen on the floor and the actors would lie on a stool, and we had a movement director, Simon. He helped them with their movements, key out the green screen and rotate them in post and rotate the green screen the other way, and it kind of gave them this floaty, zero gravity feeling. It was quite like 1980s Bollywood.
Throughout the shoot, we never met. We were always in bedrooms across the country. You know, I had my double bed folded up every morning up against the wall and a green screen dropped down behind me, and then I was filming and hearing, you know, Tristan talking about all these different codes of lighting levels and, you know, can you alter this and alter that? I mean, it was a technical nightmare. The real secret, I think, was how good the post-production was. And I know when Michael and Tom and I saw it, we were texting each other with, oh my God, this is really good.
Jesus Christ, what the hell was that? No idea.
We just kept on going. We adapted to the world as it was sort of happening. Shows filmed at theatres but without audiences. We combined the two. We went to live streaming.
You know, we got nominated for all sorts of awards. People were talking about it. You know, they weren't just tacky shots of people stuck in front of a bedsheet reading from a script. They were imaginative and exciting. And I think that upped Original's profile.
It was a way of connecting with our audiences again, finding audiences. We grew our newsletter and following from like 3,000 people to 30,000 over the last few years. So people started to know who we were as a company and cared about the work, despite the fact we couldn't be on their stages.
Look at you in the telly. What are you doing in the telly?
And then we came out of lockdown with this platform and a reputation for making digital work, and then explored how we could marry that digital work with live work and how one could possibly feed the other.
For a while, the industry beforehand, everybody was in their box. You're the touring guys. I think it kind of broke down some barriers. By the time theatres opened back up, it meant that we were able to take more risks commercially in a way that I don't think we would have done before.
We could do a play like The Interview about the Bashir-Diana interview, which we'd never normally have been able to do. But the digital gives it a financial hope of success and recoupment. We're never going to make tens of thousands of pounds, but we might break even with them, which allows these new plays to exist.
If this comes off, it'll be absolutely massive.
We've arrived 20 years after I originally founded this company. We're here in 2024. We've basically done nearly everything that we set out to do. We had shows that have played in New York. We've toured to nearly every theatre in the country. We've built a reputation. And the question, I suppose, is what do we do now?
Success and the future of where they go to next has been how they've embraced digital. And the relationship and the interplay between digital theatre and people being able to stream high-class theatre in their own homes with still having a really exciting live theatre offering.
Theatre shouldn't just be for people who can get to the theatre and pay the money it costs you. If you've got a large family, you want to see family theatre, you often can't. And we have a huge number of people on our platform that use theatre online because they need it for accessible reasons, or because they can't leave the house anymore, or because, for so many things. And art should be for everyone. Everyone should be able to access it. Everyone should be able to afford it.
I think the fact that they built this platform from scratch during the COVID pandemic, the fact that they've been willing to take some risks, the fact that they've been able to attract, you know, some of the most extraordinary actors off stage and screen to come and be involved in some quite experimental approaches to digital theatre shows that they are pushing the boundaries of what's possible. And I think there's a really long way that they can go with that.
Original now is this sort of beast. It's quite a large entity, and with, as far as I'm aware, no Arts Council money. I mean, it's a flipping miracle what he's done.
I think the dream has always been to grow and be innovative, but they've been really persistent and building up a brand that people across the country recognise. And I think that is really important. And they also are now co-producing more and more, and I think that they are now looking like the wise heads or experienced companies with new shows, rather than just having to sort of beg, borrow and steal to make it happen. They are now becoming, you know, the institution themselves, the establishment themselves.
They've gone from being a smaller touring theatre company to now being one of the best in the country.
I really see no reason why they can't go on and on. Alastair and John show no sign of slacking off or losing their enthusiasm or interest or their energy. I think they've got the will and the eccentricity and the resilience to survive.
If lockdown and anything taught us anything, it was that the bolder you are, you reap the rewards of that. Caveat all that by going, we'll probably end up bankrupting ourselves again in the process. But we will certainly look to try and be both populist, but also discover those new writers, the great actors of the tomorrow, and be the people that stage those plays first, and continue to explore this digital world and where that might go.
Maybe we can have a break when we get to 50. I'll ask him. Maybe I'll be allowed to go on holiday. Finish this pint when we turn 50.
The bells are ringing inside the Salisbury Playhouse because tonight, after months, if not years of work, our opening preview of Birdsong, the adaptation of Sebastian Faulks' epic novel, is opening here. So we've got a sold-out house. The audience are coming in and making their way in. And it's a show that's been arguably 10 years in the making. We've done 5 different productions. We've done an online film. And this is the one that we hope will be the one that will take us all the way to who knows where. This is a production that we first started in 2013, our first big show, our first big tour. From doing mid-scale theatre to sort of sub-500 seats, we shot up into doing bigger shows. And now, in 2024, 11 years on from that, we're now opening tonight to an audience this show that we hope people are going to like. First night of Birdsong. Got a park bench for where it begins, creatives on the back row, and hope the actors remember their lines, don't walk into the wallpaper, and the people like it. Here we go.
Original theatre. It's an ambitious title.
Here we go.
Original theatre is a special family, and that's what makes them unique.
They're an absolutely lovely company to work for. I mean, they are original in many ways.
Nothing can prepare us for the reality of something that is truly new.
I don't think there's another theatre company out there like the Original Theatre.
Artistically confident and integrity-full young company punching above its weight.
I mean, if you're going to do it, why not do it right?
Exactly, yeah.
Original theatre
It's like making work with friends.
Original theatre seems brimming with ideas and energy.
They're nimble and swift and they get stuff done. A lot of really special memories.
To your health, yes, and yours.
A very warm, happy congratulations to Original Theatre's 20th birthday!
Happy birthday, Original Theatre.
Happy birthday, Original, 20 years of theatre, and here's to 20 more.
Happy 20th birthday, Original Theatre.
Happy, happy birthday.
Many happy returns.
Cheers. I hope you have a wonderful birthday.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Original Theatre.
And congratulations.
Happy birthday, Original Theatre.
Happy birthday, Original Theatre.
To love oneself, it is the beginning of a lifelong romance.
For the next year, we've built it up, we made a whole film, so we should try and put our money and skills where our mouth is and present a 20th anniversary season, which starts with this play, which you saw just before the film, which is a brand new production. It was a finalist in the Women's Prize for Writing this year. Huge hit at the Edinburgh Festival, Bell Ringers by Daisy Hall. It's just finished a run at Hampstead Theatre in London. It's about two bell ringers, which immediately caught my attention as I used to ring the bells, both at Wepstead and at the Norman Tower, dreadfully. And there is a famous old folklore about bell ringers, which if you ring a certain peal, you can ward off storms. And Daisy's taken that and really run with it in this play, which is both sort of apocalyptic. It looks to the future. It's set sort of in a nondescript period in the past and features two young men who run for sanctuary in a church. And it tells the story of this knight warding off a storm and the forces of environmental change. And it's a brilliant piece. And Tristan was down at Hampstead just on Friday filming it, and we're releasing it on our online platform at the end of November. So look out for that. That's the first part of the season. And then, Gemma, if we move on to the next slide, the next one, which was previewed in the film, which is, yes, Birdsong, which Rachel here, who wrote Birdsong, who adapted it brilliantly, Max, who is in Birdsong, James, who did the music and is also in Birdsong, all here tonight. And after 15 years since it was first in London at what was called the Harold Pinter Theatre, or the Comedy Theatre back then, is coming back to London to the brilliant Alexandra Palace. It's going to be there sort of end of February for 2 weeks after its spring tour. So it finishes this week, a run at Chichester, the Festival Theatre. It then goes on to Norwich next week, and to Malvern and to Bath and to Newcastle, Brighton, Aylesbury, Birmingham, and it will conclude its run with 2 weeks at the most amazing theatre, which is the old BBC Studios in Highgate, and it will play 2 weeks there. And then from there, who knows where it may go. But that is Birdsong. After that, much to Tom Hackney's delight, Alastair Whatley, who used to appear a lot on stage, is returning to the stage. And Jem, you can move to the next one now. As there, oh no, not there he is. That's not me at all. So we'll jump forward and come back to this one. But you saw in the film that we had a play called The Croft by a writer called Ali Millison, a debut play, and that was shut down by COVID, and we've been trying to get it back on ever since. And finally, we partnered up with Wiltshire Creative down in Salisbury at the Salisbury Playhouse, and that play is going back in a brand new production with a new cast, but still directed by our great friend and associate Philip Franks. And that will be opening in the spring of next year and touring onwards. So it is fantastic to finally get the Croft back on the road. So that is the next part. Now, Jem, where do we go next? Do we go forwards or backwards in time? And the answer is we go forwards. To Murder at Midnight. So some of you may have seen Murder in the Dark, and you saw in the film that Torben Betts, the writer, who wrote Invincible, Caroline's Kitchen, that took us to New York. And last year we commissioned him, and we gave him all of 2 weeks' notice to write an entirely new play to fill a gap in our schedules, and he did brilliantly. And he wrote a play that tens of thousands of people came to see all over the country, starring Tom Chambers. And this is the next part. It's not a sequel as such, but it is hard to describe, but it is a darkly comic thriller in the vein of Knives Out. We've done some readings of it in London with the most brilliant casts, and it is rather funny, disturbing and brilliant, and it's going to open it in autumn next year. And that will take us through all the way until the spring of 2026. And I don't know whether the next really important one, Jem, I don't know if you've got this slide, because this is the one. Yes, there it is! Save the best to last. Alastair Whatley returns to the stage in The Importance of Being Oscar, which is a play, in fact, that was here at Bury St Edmunds in 2010, and we revived it in a new production directed by Mike Fentiman, designed by Maddie Girling, and we did it in Reading as a tryout in the summer. It's a co-production with Reading Rep, and it's going to be done at the Jermyn Street Theatre in the heart of London's West End, and that's going to be in March going into April. And yes, I'm back on stage, and sort of looking forward to that process. And there's other shows going to be added to that. So look, that is, in a nutshell, the work that we're going to be doing over the next 12 months or so. But now, enough of that. Let us move on, and we're going to now just move into a bit of a Q&A session. I'd like to introduce and call up Tristan McShepherd, who directed the film and many of the films that many of you have seen through lockdown: Birdsong, Apollo 13, Viral, which was our other film, The Haunting of Alice Bowles, and many more. So can we put our hands together and welcome Tristan McShepherd. Leading the Q&A today, we have Lucy. Lucy, who's just flown in today. She interviewed me on the radio, and then it was such a good interview that we said, Lucy, can you please come down and ask us some questions? Can we put our hands together and welcome Lucy Cope, please? And last but not least, could we welcome the long-suffering, hard-working actor, producer, and my right-hand man, Mr. Tom Hackney.
Good evening, everyone. Hello. This is your turn to ask the panel questions. We do have some people online who will be asking questions as well. But does anybody have any burning desired questions they'd like to ask? I think the best thing to do is maybe raise your hand so that I can go back to school, so that I can actually point at you and say your question. Does anybody have any questions?
I'll start. Tristan, how has it been, basically, working and putting this film together? How long has it taken you, and what was your aim when I kind of came to you and said, can you make a sort of retrospective view? How has that process been for you? Where did you start?
Well, where did I start? I think probably started without much idea of where I was going, to be honest. It's very classic process in I was thrust into it probably by you going, we're making a documentary about our birthday, you're directing it, congratulations. I definitely think that we did a big day of filming in Bury St Edmunds, And really, I was searching around for what angle we were going to go with on it. And after I kind of did a rough cut, which had huge amounts of gaps in it, I settled on the idea of a survival story, because that kind of felt appropriate. Kind of felt what original seemed to consistently be doing, is constantly trying to survive, with maybe a few exceptions of great success in each way. Great commercial success, you know. And how long has it taken me? It's taken me a long time. I think it's unlike, say, one of the original shows that I would normally do, where I film a show and it has a clear roadmap from beginning to end. This was something where I was trying to discover it along the way. So I would say on and off it's taken about 3 months, maybe.
Yeah, we definitely did the filming there in July.
Yeah.
I do have someone who's just come online asking a question.
Yes.
So, Alastair, original have conquered the stage, conquered online. What's next? What's the next big thing for theatre?
Well, I just don't know the answer to that. I mean, I think the next big thing for theatre is whatever script we may get sent, whichever writer we speak to. I think trying to force that agenda would be wrong. I think that's the wrong way around of doing it. We're trying to do this. We really want to get a play to Broadway. It's not about that. It's about trying to get the right story at the right time and then doing your best to put it on. And then who knows what will happen from there. You sort of just have to produce it, send it up, and see what happens. If you sort of try and play the end result too much, it always basically fails. So all we can do is try and work with the people that we do work with, get them to want to work with us again, spread the word about us, and invite writers to come in. That's when we did a project called Originals in 2022, which was we did a playwriting competition. We sent hundreds of plays. Again, cost us an absolute fortune. It was a disaster commercially, but brilliant artistically. And we discovered 4 fantastic plays, and we got 4 brilliant casts, and we produced them at Riverside Studios, streamed them live around the world, and we discovered some great writers. So maybe in the short term, we lost a fortune, made our lives very difficult for 12 months, but maybe long term, we discovered the next writers of tomorrow. Who knows where.
Well, can I add to that?
Yeah.
Because I think maybe not the next big thing for theatre, but I think the next logical step, considering tightrope walking between film and theatre for some, is to make a feature film
directed by
I'm just wondering, as a team, when things were really, really bad, what kept you all going?
Tom Hackney. To bring you in.
I don't know, like, working with Alastair sometimes is a bit... You know that quote from Only Fools and Horses, when Delboy is always constantly like, this time next week, this time next year, Ronnie, we're going to be millionaires. I've never known anyone who, because history would suggest that the next show is not going to be a success. But every time Alastair gets a script, gets enthused by it, and kind of gets the team enthused by it, you always kind of feel like, oh my God, this is the one, or this is something that's absolutely amazing. I said, and that's actually also what's kind of quite heartbreaking about it when things don't always come off, and it can just always be just like the littlest thing either side that means that something doesn't work. But when it does work, you try and ride that lightning bolt, I guess. But yeah, I'm not too sure. I suppose you just always live in hope, and we're very passionate about our industry and what we do, and want to see it continue, especially from a regional base. The great work doesn't always have to start in London to then be fed out into the regions. It can work the other way around.
Can you talk a bit about who's watching theatre online now? The theatre's obviously open again, and where they're watching.
Yeah, I mean, it is all over the world still, largely UK, but I mean 40% not UK based watching it. 25% to 30% tell us their sort of access requirements are reasons that they struggle to get to the theatre for reasons, disability or finance or geography. And then I think a lot of people that really want to get to the theatre, but sometimes it is quite difficult. You've got families, that age group, the 30s, the 40s. You've heard about a show, but actually trying to get a babysitter in, try and find whatever it may cost, £200 plus to get to the theatre in London, after you've done a restaurant, train. And that's not to stop that happening, it's just to try and get people to engage a bit more and to go, there is another way of doing that. But no, we're not trying to replace live theatre. I mean, you've seen that we're still producing more live theatre than ever. It's just trying to find a way in which more people can access it in a way that I think is quite universal, democratic, and hopefully playful and fun. And Tristan and his team have done a brilliant job at actually learning how to do that. Those early shows, Habit of Art and The Croft, were caught on 3 static cameras, and they were sort of rudimentary versions of a show. So it was much better for you to watch that show in the theatre. We did our best under very trying circumstances. But now, I mean, Tristan, you can talk about how you capture the films and how have you developed your sort of filming language over the last few years filming our shows?
Yeah, I mean, I think in terms of making, because we've all seen those shows, the static ones, where it just never replaces that live experience. I think the key to making it enjoyable at home is to kind of try and exist in a hybrid format. So we'll still capture the show in those static positions, but then we'll always reserve a session to go in and be more filmic, be more cinematic, to film sections without the audience where we can be more creative and have more cinematic flair. And then I do think it's a challenge then blending those two things together, but I think that is the answer.
I think an interesting to on that, which was when we did Hound of the Baskervilles, it was the first proper outright comedy that we filmed. We filmed it in Coventry, and you came up with these brilliant shots, and we sort of went in loads of close-ups. We went right up on stage, and there were some very funny set pieces which we recorded. And then we came to watch back the rushes and the bit, and we found that we've sort of left out the audience. We watched it back, and there was no audience noise. We hadn't kind of caught that audience response, and in that instance, we sort of we realised we needed to sort of actually at some point pull back. That play demanded kind of that to try and transmit the live experience of watching it as well as the experience of you watching it from home. So that was a big learning experience for what was Hound of the Baskervilles. But then that's very different to a play like, Bell Ringers that you've just done.
Yeah, or End of the Night, which we did with no audience.
Which is much more like a film.
Yeah.
I've got another one from online. Will Original do a musical one day?
Yes, I think it is inevitable that we will. It would have to be the right one. It would have to be one. It wouldn't be, I don't believe, a classic sort of American Broadway musical. It would be something a bit more offbeat, probably something that James Finley wrote some music for. It would be something that we just feel we had to do. I can't quite tell you what that is. Lots of our plays feature a lot of music.
Including our current one.
Including current one, featuring music from James Finley. So, yes, but with a few dots of the question mark on.
Yeah, my query was just, you mentioned at the end of the night, that was the Penley Lifeboat.
No, that was Into the Night. Two plays produced in similar time periods. One was called Into the Night, about the Penley Lifeboat. One, End of the Night, which was about Himmler visiting a Jewish person in the middle of the second.
With the Penley Lifeboat disaster, there were very particular circumstances about actually getting that on camera. Could you just outline a bit what actually happened that night?
So, Into the Night, this was the end of 2021, so if you do cast your minds to the endless lockdowns that we had, December 21 was the point where the Omicron crisis was swirling around us. And when it was less prevalent, we thought we were out of the woods, I was sent this script about the Penley Lifeboat, which is an incredible story of heroism and bravery about a small lifeboat that went to the rescue of a trawler that was sinking off the Cornish coast around Christmas time. And almost impossible to stage as a play, but I got this script and I kind of thought there was something in it. We developed it. We were going to do it at the Minack Theatre in Cornwall, and then that all changed, and before we knew it, we were doing it in a church hall in Kennington in London in the middle of an outbreak of Omicron. But before we get to the Omicron, this was also the most ambitious thing that we'd ever done. So it was an hour and a half live film that involved helicopter rescue, a storm. It was all filmed effectively one take as you were watching it. There were multiple cameras, but it all went straight through without a break. There was a cast of 12 actors, including James who's here, and there was music, there was some of the camera trickery that you saw that Tristan did. It's one of the few that Tristan, fortunately for him, because his sanity may not have ever recovered, he didn't do it. And then we did the technical rehearsal, and we felt, this is where we felt we really had something extraordinary. It was sort of working. It shouldn't have worked, but it was working. And we had a live audience that were coming in. Everyone had to wear masks. And then we did the technical rehearsal. And then that night at midnight, one of the actors, Hubert, who we'd worked with before, sent me that dreaded he said he'd been pinged. We had one COVID cover, Jamie, and Jamie then was going to go on, learn it up, and basically do it the next day, completely sort of off book, and sort of find his way through. But then one of the film crew also got, pinged as well. And then at that point, at that period, it was sort of like we have to stop it, and so we did. And so after this was cost 6 figures, a lot of money, and but by some miracle, someone had just happened to press record on the technical rehearsal, so we had thousands of people had sort of booked to see it, but we weren't going to be able to refund all their money. Anyway, we got the rushes from that technical rehearsal, and we sort of cobbled something together in the day, and then we honed it over Christmas and re-released it. And actually, even though it's completely imperfect, and I would always wonder what would have happened if we could have done it properly, there's something sort of wonderful about the rough kind of magic of this kind of rough-hewn, imperfect version of it that was released, and it went to win awards, and it did very well. But it's always a tinge of regret as to what we could have done the next day had we been allowed to go and do it.
It's funny actually that bit, because one thing that you miss from doing the recorded digital work for actual theatres, of course, is the live element, and almost recording that was almost like a bit like Play for Today, when plays used to be put on like the BBC and things like that. So there are actors kind of either fluffing their lines or accidentally walking the wrong way and then going, oh, no, like walking. But you watch the whole thing, and there's a kind of chaos to it, which actually kind of really works. It really feels live, and that's what we're, with Tristan's help, always trying to kind of get, because you go from something that is very much a 3D medium, live music, plays, musicals, and then as soon as you put it on screen, it can sometimes can deaden that response between what the audience and what you're viewing. And so to actually have something like that, it kind of creates something kind of quite incredible, but it is far from perfect.
And on that, some of you watched Being Mr. Wickham, you may have watched it live, but you also may have watched it online back in May of 21. And Adrian, who I think is watching, he won't mind me saying this, but on the only time this happened to him, it was a live one-person show, multiple cameras, steady cams, all sorts, at Theatre Royal in Bury St Edmunds, and broadcast live. And the first show, he was word perfect, it was perfect. And the second show, I think it was the Friday night. Anyway, he just dropped a line, he had to call for a line. But for the audience at home, it made it, actually, this was happening live, it made it real, it made sort of the stakes of what he was doing. Sometimes it can be too perfect, it can be too clean, and some of the things that we've done, no sense of the sort of the mad swan's legs under the surface, going 10 to the dozen, and that was the performance I think that actually got reviewed and did brilliantly. Partly I think because people got to see sort of it was real, it was happening live, and there was somebody actually doing this straight monologue for 90 minutes, looking at multiple cameras, moving around in this intense choreography, and it came alive because of that.
Another question online: how do I become a cast member?
So there's not. There used to be in the old ways. There were various websites that you could do. Now we employ casting directors, and we tend to put those up on the website when we announce the show. So the best thing to do is keep an eye on those. But also you can write to us and invite us to see shows. We try and do that. We try and reply whenever we can. And we also try and keep good relations. We've got a few of those actors here today that have worked with us for nearly 10 years, and so we try and sort of combine bringing new people in and working with our old friends as well.
Yeah. Watching that, what struck me most was love. The people that work with original theatre love company, and you generate families, you generate this real sense of loyalty and passion. My question, in fact my demand to you is the theatre company's obviously got bigger and bigger, so well done for putting out the answer. It's got bigger and bigger, and how do you maintain that sense of family and togetherness while also growing and staying?
Well, the answer is tomorrow morning at 7 o'clock, Max, James and I will travel down to Chichester, and I will spend the entire day with the cast performing your play, working by the time we get there, working very hard to readapt the play, And I think we're never too far. I mean, we've grown, but we're only 7 of us, and of them 4 are full time. So the core team producing it is still really small. So we never get too far away from the hard end of things.
But I also think it is to do with you, chap, and I think it's like when you set up a company, there are some people, there are lots of producers out there that, set up, Alastair Whatley Incorporated, or things like that, and it was original theatre company. I think your background of, like loving shows at the RSC and things like that, the company, part of that was really important, and I suppose, both coming from acting backgrounds and stuff, knowing that touring theatre is difficult. I mean, me and Alistair go and see our shows like nearly every week, that they're on tour. Much to kind of a lot of sometimes a lot of the cast kind of get really freaked out by it because producers don't really tend to do that. They keep thinking they're in trouble, or we're just weird. But we treat our our companies like companies. We like to go and support our shows. We'd love to go see them, make sure everyone's kind of like looked after. I think that's really important. We know that we're in, some might deem it the kind of the less sexy version of our industry in terms of going on tour, being away from your families. This stuff is it's really important. I feel the work that we do, but it demands a lot from the people that you're employing, and to know that we're in there with them. We're not just sitting around swanning going, oh, they're in Aberdeen this week. That we're kind of like there with them, and we're not too far away. That's what we try and do. We might just annoy the hell out of them.
I think you demand a lot from the people that you employ. I know that firsthand. But you trust them and you empower them, and that's why I wanted to make stuff. I don't think I would have done it for many others.
Thanks, Tristan.
Can I just read out some comments that we've had online? Love the film, just wish it were 90 minutes. Love from Romania. I can barely get to the theatre in my area. It's amazing that I can watch English plays online. Thank you for your work. Does anybody have one last question?
Do you have a favourite production from the last 20 years?
Viral, yes, the film. It was amazing. That was a zombie thriller that we filmed at Tristan's house. His poor wife and daughter hiding away.
And you were in that as well. You were like on the SWAT people turned up on.
Yeah, I had to wait in a car for 6 hours whilst he filmed this, and I couldn't get out because it was COVID, and then we never even got to it that night. That was memory of filming Viral. I'm going to say there's many I can say. It's hard to choose because we could have loved them all, but one that kind of got a bit neglected, and you and I both were there. It was Napoli, Brooklyn, which actually ended up, it didn't do very well. In fact, it got a string of 1-star reviews when it hit London, but we saw it in the first show in Malvern. And this was a show that I brought over. I saw it in New York and loved it, and thought, oh yeah, a play called Napoli, Brooklyn, that would do brilliantly around the regions in England. And this was 2018, maybe 2019, so before COVID. And anyway, but we kind of produced this, but we brought in this brilliant sort of young, thrusting director and her designer, and we did it to basically an empty house in Malvern, big commercial theatre, and there may be 80 people watching it. But I think we both looked at each other like, even though no one's come to see it, this is really good. They were really, really pleased that we've done this. And then we sent it off, and the audience built, and then for whatever reason it came into London, and it just died with the critics, and with that died all. And we look back on it now, and it's sort of your feelings about it are marred by those reviews and what people said about it. But I still kind of, after you get over the sort of bruising of that, you kind of look back, and I was really proud that we did that. It was a really good bit of work, really difficult to produce, and cost us an absolute fortune. I think it really, really did. One of those that really bankrupt us yet again. But anyway, but I look back on that, and I think I'm very proud that we did that one. So there's many favourites, but I will just give a quiet shout out to that one that on the paper maybe could have been forgotten.
You did want to slide it into the documentary.
Yeah, I did. You've got one shot.
We can't have another bankruptcy story.
Maybe what on your birthday?
You've touched on it slightly, but I was wondering about the critics, how you cope with it. I'm sure most of them are wonderful reviews, but when they're not good reviews, do you find it constructive, hurtful? I mean, how do you cope with it? Do you get cross? I mean,
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I get very Alistair, I think the difference between me and Alistair, like Peter Cook and Dudley Moore, we've react very differently to things. And Alastair is always like, don't sell it, kind of like, let's just plough on, go forward. Whereas I will be spitting teeth, and he'll have to like stop me from typing something to the reviewer, kind of saying, how dare you? So I always, and it's really hard because the actor's process, for example, is, obviously it's stressful going to auditions, but once you get the play, once you get the part, it's kind of, there's a natural trajectory of what you then do to kind of go on stage, perform in front of a live audience. And to be honest, even if you're in a play that you might even know is awful, we're a very polite country, people will applaud you at the end of your show, whereas I would equate kind of producing to being more like watching your child grow up and going to university. That it's a much longer game from conception, of finding those scripts, through to, my God, having to develop the scripts, trying to raise money for those scripts, getting the right director in, then getting the right casting in, and to go through that whole journey, which can take years to come to fruition. But then just one night somebody to say, oh well, that was a bit rubbish, and you're like, it's like a year and a half of your life. Yeah. So of course you feel really, and you get you become attached to productions like you would do to anything that you love.
Do you get to know some of the critics? I mean, do you know when they? You do. And do you think, oh God, he's coming tonight, or whatever, or a bit?
I won't comment on that.
Okay.
So Dory, who deals with all our press, is here and builds very good relationships with those press. On the whole, the theatre makers, the actors, tend to have a slightly, or should really have a more aloof relationship. I don't think they should be friends. It's important. There's a really important role for good theatre criticism, and because the broadsheets now have less space, they have less space, and the advent of star ratings are so reductive, really. How do you sort of kind of put a star rating on what is effectively a bit of art that is entirely subjective? And there's some brilliant reviewers that are still here today, but certainly from the past, that would write long form about a show. And now we look on social media and it's all sort of sound bites. It's sort of, okay, it's right, that's a 2-star show, therefore it's not very good, or it's a 3-star review. I won't even read that because that's sort of neither one thing or the other. Or it's a 5-star review and I should book tickets for it. And I think both arts editors and newspapers in general have got a little bit more, I suppose, what's the word, clickbaity, in that in order to get views on it, you have to try and make headlines that make people look at it in order that they may still have column space the next week. So it's a vicious cycle which social media has helped engender, which I think is disappointing, because I think it's important that people come and watch and give critical viewpoints, and also that you as the artist making it strong enough, either just don't read it at all. I always say, reading, to cast in a play, just don't read it, because if they're good reviews, then the worst thing is you could end up believing it. You'll believe your own reviews, and that can kill a performance. I've seen that happen. Or they're a dreadful review, and you can't, the idea of getting a 1-star review where you've been completely hauled over the coals and you have to go out the next night and do it again, how can that not affect you and what you're doing? But it's easier said than done. The Madness of George III, I think that was the most personal, vitriolic attack I can suggest anyone has ever got. The entirety of the Scottish press sort of went for me, so I kind of feel I've got over that. And so, I can sort of...
I asked you how did you regain your sense of confidence after something like that? And Alastair was just like, make another play.
Yeah, you just keep on, keeping on. One more.
Many of you will know Alastair's passion outside theatre currently is hockey.
Oh, well done, quite right. Time for that.
20 minutes of hockey.
I'm just looking forward. I think I saw a hockey stick in one of your stills on screen, which is a delight. So, are we going to see more productions with hockey sticks?
There was Vara, but it wasn't Vara. He was talking about the Apollo 13. There are some great stories to be told about sport. We had this question with Rachel at dinner before we met. And Rachel was talking about this great story about, which was the team? Dynamo Zagreb, and the story set in the, Kiev, sorry, set in the war where they took on an SS team. It's a true story. And she just, wow, that's brilliant. It's an amazing story, but sport on the whole that involves the playing of games is probably better suited to a filmic medium. And I suspect, Vicky, that until we fully embrace Tristan and his filmmaking, we'll probably stay away from the hockey, although the behind-the-scenes dramas at Southgate would make, particularly in the committee room, would make a fantastic play. Yeah, so that's my answer on the hockey front. George, do you have one more?
I was just going to say, I discovered how special live theatre was that night when the rains came down on perfect time at the end of the play. Just how did you organise that?
No, yeah, that was remarkable. And yeah, those that were there, and a few of you were here tonight amazingly, brilliantly, were here 20 years on from that. Yeah, you didn't stay to clap, you just ran through the cars.
And he hasn't forgotten.
Yeah, no, that was sort of, I think that sort of was an apt beginning, and we probably couldn't have written it better.
Those of us in the room who've worked with you so much, so thank you. We've all loved working with you, which is why we're all here, so thank you.
And that august note is good evening. Thank you for coming. Thank you for being part of our 20-year anniversary, and those that have been along with the ride for us. Here's to the next 20. All right, let's enjoy the rest of our evening. Thank you, everyone.